Perspective on what's happening at the border. Let's bring in Ohio Congressman and ranking member of the House Judiciary Committee, Jim Jordan. Congressman, thank you for coming on. We very much appreciate it. You know, we have been down at the border, meaning Fox News has been down there for the better part of 2 years, every single day. And the media has ignored this story altogether. And suddenly, for the past couple of days, you have Gavin Newsom down at the border, not California, mind you, but down at a border. You have some Democrats in the Midwest talking about the border. And now the news media is also covering this. Watch this, and we'll get your response on the other side.
It's extraordinary how collapsed our immigration system is, and there's no resolution in sight here.
They're being kidnapped, starved, raped, extorted. That's just in Mexico. I'm just wondering, Anna, where is the urgency here? Where is the outrage?
Where is the urgency? Where has the coverage been for 2 years? Congressman, what's going on here?
Yeah, you know, I don't know. Maybe it's just gotten to the point where it is so bad that even Democrats say we got to do something. Now, I think it's interesting because I think they intentionally created this situation when they got rid of all the good policies that were put in by the Trump administration. I think it's been intentional the whole way because you can't have the record numbers we've had and it not be intentional. You can't have a Secretary of Homeland Security who comes in front of Congress and tells us the border is secure. And now you have this situation that we've seen now that you guys have reported better than anyone day after day after day. So I don't know what's going on. Obviously, the Title 42 is coming to an end here.
Right.
So what's prompting this? I don't know. But God bless them. Maybe they've finally seen the light and they're going to do something that's actually good for the country.
It's amazing. We know from the Twitter files, the drop after drop, that the Biden administration, you know, it appears worked with big tech, right? Worked with big tech to censor conservatives.
Sure did.
And now, Congressman, you want to go after records. What are you looking for specifically?
We want to know if they did the same darn thing at all the other social media platforms. We know because of Elon Musk what they did at Twitter. Our working theory is they did this with all the big tech platforms. We also, our working theory is that this was an a misinformation operation run on the American people. You know, that letter from those 51 former Intel officials said this has all, the Hunter Biden story has all the classic earmarks of a Russian misinformation operation. Well, the truth is our government colluded with big tech to run a misinformation operation on we the people just days before the most important election we have. And the facts all point to that. We want to see how widespread it is because we know what Zuckerberg told Joe Rogan, that the same thing happened to him and Facebook that happened at Twitter. We want to know how broad this goes and find out exactly what took place.
What about those 51 Intel officials? Will you bring them in? And if so, are there any potential consequences for those people doing what they did?
Well, this is if you got government pressuring people to limit First Amendment rights of Americans, that's potentially a civil rights violation. We'll have to see. But I think it was all coordinated. And remember, Jim Baker was on both sides of the equation. Jim Baker was the chief counsel at the FBI when they were spying on Trump, when he accepted the information from Clinton's attorney, Mr. Zussman, that was all garbage. Then he goes to Twitter conveniently just a few months before the presidential election of 2020. So it sure looks like this was a cozy relationship, and you had big government, big media, big tech colluding to keep critical information from the American people, again, just days and weeks before the most important election we have.
Yeah, and you talk about it, all stuff that was on the Twitter files as well. I know you believe there is evidence that COVID is tied to China's biological weapons program. Will you subpoena Intel officials on that front to get more information?
I think that will probably happen in the Intel committee. But we do know, we don't know if this was a bioweapon or not, but the Intel committee has put out a report that says it may be. So we'll find out. I think they'll focus there. We are focused on how this thing started. And I think one of the interesting questions is, Trace, why aren't the Democrats interested in how this started? Maybe if we'd have known how this thing really began, that would have helped us save lives and not led to the loss in education for students, not led to the shutdown of businesses, not led to the attacks on our liberties. We know this, Trace. On January 31st, 2020, Dr. Fauci gets an email from Dr. Christian Anderson, a guy that Dr. Fauci had handed out our tax money to for years. Dr. Anderson in that email says, virus looks engineered. Virus is not consistent with evolutionary theory. That's a fancy way of saying this thing came from a lab. But what do? They organize a conference call. They get people and they change their story and say, no, you're crazy if you think it came from a lab. It was a bat to a pangolin to a hippopotamus to Joe Rogan, and the whole world gets COVID. I mean, come on. Do they think we're crazy? So we're going to get to the bottom of this in Judiciary Committee and Oversight Committee. But I think on the question of a bioweapon issue, that will be done in the Intelligence Committee.